Ladies and gentlemen, will you please welcome to the stage, Matthew Geraths!
Sometimes it is not always obvious where the private sex party is. I remember Kelly and I standing in the middle of the street. It was this cute southeast neighborhood, and it was just after dusk, so it was dark, the lights were off. It was that time of night when most people are tucked in or committed to whatever Netflix binging they're doing. And I don't know if I had an expectation, and I can't say that I had an image in my mind of what a private sex party house would look like, but this wasn't it, right? It was weird. I mean, the juxtaposition between this idyllic little neighborhood and our hunt for the house full of people waiting to have orgies and be suspended, spanked, and fucked was just surreal. And I remember that funny feeling. You know that feeling you get when your reality is not quite the same as everybody else's? It's kind of like that time you got stoned at Thanksgiving dinner, and you're secretly loving the meal a little more than everybody else, and nobody knows why. That was the feeling I had. I was on that block for a radically different reason than anybody else. But we were determined, and we found the house. And I remember walking up the 3 little steps onto that cute little craftsman porch, and I knocked, and admittedly, I may have knocked a little too hard, too long, because Kelly looked at me with this expression that kind of said 2 things at once. Calm your ass down. And it's okay. I'm nervous too. But seriously, keep your shit together. So the door opens and we go in. Now, before I tell you what happened that night, I kind of have to explain how we got onto that porch. And to do that, I have to explain my relationship to Kelly. She was one of the most unique individuals I had ever dated at this time in my sexual career. She was a tenacious, funny, thoughtful woman. And she owned her sexual politics in such a genuine way. For example, her language was everything. I'd never met anybody that could make such a clear distinction between the word sex and intercourse. She's the only human being I've ever met that could say something like, oh yeah, we had sex last night. I mean, there was a little intercourse, but we mostly had a whole lot of sex. And one of the best parts of our relationship was the way she challenged me to really practice what I taught. At this point, I was really kind of learning how to align my sexual politics with my own sexual practices. And she challenged me in a lot of ways. But there was this one way in particular that always threw me off. Anytime I made a sexual joke, she always had this response. For example, I could say something like, oh, well, tie me up and call me Kinky. And she would look at me and go, oh, is that something you want? It never failed. I was always like, ha-ha! Maybe? I don't know. Okay. That was such a powerful question. I think it was powerful because it forced me to be seen. It forced me to be vulnerable. And it was that question that led to, so many sexual adventures. And clearly at some point I had made a comment to the effect of, wouldn't it be really funny if we went to a private sex party and did dirty things? Ha ha! And that's why we were on the porch. So I knock, door opens, and we walk in. And the hosts saw us, and they were so excited to see us, primarily because they knew that this was really the first time we had ever done anything like this. And they were wonderfully attentive. And they explained to us that when they throw their parties, they always open up with a ritual called Dessert Girl. Now, the way this works is that they asked a female-identified individual to volunteer. Now, before that sentence was done, Kelly's hand was up in the air, going like, that'll be me, which was par for the course. So what happens is the volunteer undresses to their level of comfort, and they lay down on this beautiful granite slab that they had positioned in the middle of this room. And all around the granite were all sorts of goodies, like strawberries and bananas, and they had like a tub of Nutella. And of course, whipped cream. And they even had like the shaker of like the things you put on cupcakes, like the sprinkles. Thank you. Thank you. That's what that was, sprinkles. Which I found really random and odd, but why not, right? And so this ritual had two phases. Phase one was everybody else that was participating got to put all these goodies all over her body. And phase two was where we got to lovingly lick and nibble and eat all this food off of her. And while this is happening, I look down and I see on her face the most wonderful, childlike giddiness. I mean, she's just loving it. And she's excited. And I notice I'm excited. And I'm really excited. And I think for two reasons. Up to this point, I had always prided myself on my ability to learn what my partners wanted and try to facilitate that, try to make their fantasies come true. But I realized something else was happening. I was also excited in anticipation. I was excited to be dessert girl. And I was excited for what my dessert girl moment was going to be. I mean, we were at a private sex party, so there was going to be something. And maybe. So after the ritual was done, she went to go clean off. Now, I knew Kelly was really excited about bondage and flogging. So I went up to the host and I said, hey, I really want to spank my partner. I want to know how to flog her. Is that something you can do at a party like this? And the host laughs because she's like, yeah, we have a spanking room. News to me. So they whisk the two of us to the spanking room, and I walk in, and the first thing I see is this beautifully constructed, by hand, wooden X in the center of the room, and it had these thick leather cuffs with these silver rings on it. And next to it was this table, and it just had a cornucopia of spanking tools. I mean, we're talking crops and paddles and floggers. So we secure Kelly to the X. And the host is wonderful. She shows me all the safe places on her body that I can hit her. And she explains, especially for someone new, there are certain places that are safer. And she shows me how to warm up her body. And so we begin to flog Kelly. And I watch her go from, to yep. Yes, please. And again, I start to feel this dual excitement. And I watch her just become lost in this experience. So we take her down, and they all look at me with this big grin, because now it's my turn. And they secure me. And I'm excited. Like, I'm ready to get my sexy on. And sophisticated language. And they ask me what I want. And I go, well, that looks a little scary. So how about we do the flogging? I'll do the flogging. Now, Some of you already know this, but a flogger has multiple often leather strands, and it actually didn't feel the way I thought it would. I expected pain, but it's actually more of a thudding. Like it's this like almost full body thudding, and it felt to me more like an intimate Charlie horse. Meanwhile, the host and another woman ask if they can join in. And I was like, yes, you can. By all means. And with my permission, they decide to use the whipping crops. Now, again, if you've ever been hit with a crop, that is a very area-specific pain. That shit hurts. So now, the three of them are taking turns just going to town on my ass. And I feel myself go from, oh, to nope. Not for me. Shit hurts. So they take me down, and they say, you know, what was it like? And I said, honestly, meh. But that's okay, because we got bondage, and there's a bondage room. So we get whisked away to the bondage room, and the host and I begin to tie Kelly up, and I remember the intricate mapping of the rope all over her body, and it was stunning. It was beautiful. And again, I felt that dual excitement. And again, she loses herself in the experience. In fact, at one point, when I cinched the rope just tight enough, she came. So afterward, we untie her, and it's my turn. Now, I don't know if it was the ropes we were using. I was a little surprised at how scratchy and rough the rope was. And also, it takes time and talent to do some of those more intricate knots. So we're talking, we're a good 20, maybe 30 minutes into this before I am like fully tied up. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little fatigued at this point, and I itch, and my hands are behind my back, and I did not have permission to get that itch scratched. Which I did not find funny. And so, the crescendo was laying me down on the ground, and there was this shift. I remember my face. I was face down, and this thought came. And I was like, oh, they really need to shampoo their carpet? So, at this point, it's clear I'm not into it. And they untie me, and again, they asked me what it was like. And again, I was like, eh. Well, unfortunately, the rest of the night was a repeat of those scenarios over and over again. It was a ritual of watching her lose herself in these moments, to just enjoy herself and be excited. And then it was my turn, and I just lived in my head. I didn't really get into my body. I didn't feel the sexy. And by the time the night ended, I remember Kelly had asked me, well, what did you think? And I made a joke, and this is a joke I had made before, where I said, yeah, you know, it was cool. I mean, they were missing one thing. They were missing the kiddie pool full of lube. Now, this joke has some history to it. In a fit of honesty and vulnerability, I told Kelly that the earliest fantasy I could remember, really the first fantasy as a kid that I could remember having, was the desire to just be covered in oil and be able to roll around with my partner. I mean, just the idea of what that would feel like. I mean, every surface becomes something to play with. And I can't really tell you where that fantasy came from. What I can tell you is, as a kid, I really loved myself some slip and slide, and so... yeah. Well, when I made this joke, for the first time, Kelly didn't respond with, "Oh, is that something you want?" But rather, she looked at me and said, "Seriously?" And no sooner did she say that, did I feel the warm wash of shame and embarrassment. And I felt bad. I'm not gonna lie, the night ended on a sour note. So a week later, when she called me to say, "We need to talk," I knew what was coming. I knew my relationship was over. And I'll never forget that drive over to her house. It wasn't just shame. I felt like I was a sexual failure, and that not only did I fail Kelly, I had somehow failed myself. I mean, I got to experience things that really exist in the realm of sexual fantasies for most people, and it didn't do much for me. And I knew that I would walk into her room and I would see that face. You know that face expression that someone has when they're the ones ending a relationship. It's kind of the preamble look to the end of a relationship. And so I walked in, almost in tears, just really hurting. And what I see is Kelly standing there like this, with a coy little smile on her face. And then I look to the right, and on her nightstand was probably the largest jug of walnut oil I have ever seen. And I then noticed that the bed was covered in plastic drop cloths. And it slowly dawned on me that not only was my relationship not over, but I was about to have playtime. A sexy slip and slide. And I immediately became more turned on than I have ever been in my entire life. I mean, even when I was taking my clothes off, which we did with very little ceremony, I was on fire. I was excited, really excited. And the sound the plastic made as we made our way to the middle of the bed, that crunchy sound, it was just like, crinkle, crinkle, you go. Crinkle, crinkle, so hot. And Kelly's touch as she lathered on what essentially is cooking oil, which she did her research, really good for your skin, walnut oil. Better than lube. And I remember her touch was just electric. And we proceeded to have the best sex of my life. And as I laid there post-sexual bliss, I was trying to wrap my head around what was different about this. I mean, how was this different than being suspended from a ceiling? And it occurred to me that Kelly had created a safe space for me in which I think this was really the first time I ever let my guard down. I actually let myself be vulnerable in a way I hadn't before. She had offered this amazing gift, and I finally let myself receive it. I finally let myself really let it be about me. And it also occurred to me then and this is something that always stuck with me, is that, oh, it's not actually the specific sex act that you do, but rather the degree of vulnerability and the willingness to receive that leads to the best sex of your life, and sometimes a little intercourse. Thank you.